Section number 1 of John Keats Selected Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leonard Wilson. John Keats Selected Poems. La Belle Dame sans Merci. Oh, what can ail thee, knight-at-arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge hath withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight-at-arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest's done. I see a lily on thy brow, with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a faery's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore. And there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses four. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed, ah, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamed on the cold hill's side. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La Belle Dame sans Merci have thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hill's side. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. End of La Belle Dame sans Merci by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section number 2 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Why did I laugh tonight? No voice will tell. Why did I laugh tonight? No voice will tell. No god, no demon of severe response deigns to reply from heaven or from hell. Then to my human heart I turn at once. Heart, thou and I are here, sad and alone. I say, why did I laugh? O mortal pain, O darkness, darkness, ever must I moan to question heaven and hell and heart in vain. Why did I laugh? I know this being's lease, my fancy to its utmost blisses spreads. Yet would I on this very midnight cease, and the world's gaudy ensigns see in shreds. Verse, fame, and beauty are intense indeed, but death intenser. Death is life's high meed. End of Why Did I Laugh Tonight? No Voice Will Tell by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 3 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Meg Merrilies. Old Meg she was a gypsy, and lived upon the moors. Her bed it was the brown heath turf, and her house was out of doors. Her apples were swart blackberries, her currants pods o' broom. Her wine was dew of the wild white rose, her book a churchyard tomb. Her brothers were the craggy hills, her sisters larchen trees. Alone with her great family she lived as she did please. No breakfast had she many a morn, no dinner many a noon. Instead of supper she would stare full hard against the moon. But every morn of woodbine fresh she made her garlanding, and every night the dark glen yew she wove, and she would sing. And with her fingers old and brown she plaited mats o' rushes, and gave them to the cottagers she met among the bushes. Old Meg was brave as Margaret Queen, and tall as Amazon. An old red blanket cloak she wore, a chip hat she had on. God rest her aged bones somewhere. She died full long agone. End of Meg Merrilies by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 4 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. The Eve of St. Agnes. St. Agnes' Eve, ah, bitter chill it was. The owl, for all his feathers, was a cold. The hare limped trembling through the frozen grass, and silent was the flock in woolly fold. Numb were the beadsman's fingers while he told his rosary, and while his frosted breath, like pious incense from a censer old, seemed taking flight for heaven without a death, past the sweet Virgin's picture, while his prayer he saith. His prayer he saith, this patient holy man, then takes his lamp and riseth from his knees, and back returneth, meagre, barefoot, wan, along the chapel aisle by slow degrees. The sculptured dead on each side seemed to freeze, imprisoned in black purgatorial rails. Knights, ladies, praying in dumb oratories, he passeth by, and his weak spirit fails to think how they may ache in icy hoods and mails. Northward he turneth through a little door, and scarce 3 steps, ere music's golden tongue flattered to tears this aged man and poor. But no, already had his death bell rung, the joys of all his life were said and sung. His was harsh penance on St. Agnes' Eve. Another way he went, and soon among rough ashes sat he for his soul's reprieve, and all night kept awake for sinners' sake to grieve. That ancient beadsman heard the prelude soft, and so it chanced, for many a door was wide from hurry to and fro. Soon up aloft the silver snarling trumpets 'gan to chide. The level chambers, ready with their pride, were glowing to receive 1,000 guests. The carved angels, ever eager-eyed, stared where upon their heads the cornice rests, with hair blown back and wings put crosswise on their breasts. At length burst in the argent revelry, with plume, tiara, and all rich array, numerous as shadows, haunting fairily the brain, new-stuffed in youth with triumphs gay of old romance. These let us wish away, and turn sole-thoughted to one lady there, whose heart had brooded all that wintry day on love and winged St. Agnes' saintly care, as she had heard old dames full many times declare. They told her how, upon St. Agnes' eve, young virgins might have visions of delight, and soft adorings from their loves receive upon the honeyed middle of the night, if ceremonies due they did aright. As supperless to bed they must retire, and couch supine their beauties lily white, nor look behind nor sideways, but require of heaven with upward eyes for all that they desire. Full of this whim was thoughtful Madeline. The music, yearning like a god in pain, she scarcely heard. Her maiden eyes divine, fixed on the floor, saw many a sweeping train pass by. She heeded not at all. In vain came many a tiptoe amorous cavalier, and back retired, not cooled by high disdain, but she saw not. Her heart was otherwhere. She sighed for Agnes's dreams, the sweetest of the year. She danced along with vague, regardless eyes, anxious her lips, her breathing quick and short. The hallowed hour was near at hand. She sighs amid the timbrels and the thronged resort of whisperers in anger or in sport. Mid looks of love, defiance, hate, and scorn, hoodwinked with fairy fancy, all amort save to St. Agnes and her lambs unshorn, and all the bliss to be before tomorrow morn. So, purposing each moment to retire, she lingered still. Meantime, across the moors had come young Porphyro, with heart on fire for Madeline. Beside the portal doors, buttressed for moonlight, stands he, and implores all saints to give him sight of Madeline, but for one moment in the tedious hours, that he might gaze and worship all unseen, perchance speak, kneel, touch, kiss, in sooth such things have been. He ventures in. Let no buzzed whisper tell, all eyes be muffled, or 100 swords will storm his heart, love's fever's citadel. For him those chambers held barbarian hordes, hyena foemen, and hot-blooded lords, whose very dogs would execrations howl against his lineage. Not one breast affords him any mercy in that mansion foul, save one old beldam, weak in body and in soul. Ah, happy chance! The aged creature came, shuffling along with ivory-headed wand, to where he stood, hid from the torch's flame, behind a broad hall-pillar, far beyond the sound of merriment and chorus bland. He startled her, but soon she knew his face, and grasped his fingers in her palsied hand, saying, "Mercy, Porphyro! Hie thee from this place. They are all here to night, the whole bloodthirsty race. Get hence, get hence! There's dwarfish Hildebrand, he had a fever late, and in the fit he cursed thee and thine, both house and land. Then there's that old Lord Maurice, not a whit more tame for his grey hairs. Alas me! Flit, flit like a ghost away. Ah, gossip dear, we're safe enough. Here in this armchair sit, and tell me how. Good saints, not here, not here! Follow me, child, or else these stones will be thy bier." He followed through a lowly arched way, brushing the cobwebs with his lofty plume, and as she muttered, "Wella, wella day," he found him in a little moonlight room, pale, latticed, chill, and silent as a tomb. "Now tell me, where is Madeline?" said he. "Oh, tell me, Angela, by the holy loom, which none but secret sisterhood may see, when they St. Agnes' wool are weaving piously." "St. Agnes, ah, it is St. Agnes' eve. Yet men will murder upon holy days. Thou must hold water in a witch's sieve, and be liege lord of all the elves and fays, to venture so. It fills me with amaze to see thee, Porphyro. Saint Agnes Eve, God's help! My lady fair the conjurer plays this very night. Ha, ha! Good angels her deceive. But let me laugh awhile. I've mickle time to grieve. Feebly she laugheth in the languid moon, while Porphyro upon her face doth look, like puzzled urchin on an aged crone, who keepeth closed a wondrous riddle book, as spectacled she sits in chimney nook. But soon his eyes grew brilliant when she told his lady's purpose, and he scarce could brook tears at the thought of those enchantments cold, and Madeline asleep in lap of legends old. Sudden a thought came like a full-blown rose, flushing his brow, and in his painted heart made purple riot. Then doth he propose a stratagem that makes the beldam start. "A cruel man and impious thou art! Sweet lady, let her pray and sleep and dream alone with her good angels, far apart from wicked men like thee. Go, go! I deem thou canst not surely be the same that thou didst seem." "I will not harm her, by all saints I swear," quoth Porphyro. "Oh, may I ne'er find grace when my weak voice shall whisper its last prayer, if one of her soft ringlets I displace, or look with ruffian passion in her face. Good Angela, believe me by these tears, or I will, even in a moment's space, awake with horrid shout my foemen's ears, and beard them, though it be more fanged than wolves and bears." "Ah, why wilt thou affright a feeble soul, a poor weak palsy-stricken churchyard thing, whose passing bell may ere the midnight toll, whose prayers for thee each morn and evening were never missed?" Thus plaining does she bring a gentler speech from burning Porphyro, so woful and of such deep sorrowing, that Angela gives promise she will do whatever he shall wish, betide her weal or woe; which was to lead him in close secrecy even to Madeline's chamber, and there hide him in a closet of such privacy that he might see her beauty unespied, and win, perhaps that night, a peerless bride, while legioned fairies paced the coverlet, and pale enchantment held her sleepy-eyed. Never on such a night have lovers met, since Merlin paid his demon all the monstrous debt. "It shall be as thou wishest," said the dame. "All cates and dainties shall be stored there, quickly on this feast night. By the tambour frame her own lute thou wilt see. No time to spare, for I am slow and feeble, and scarce dare on such a catering trust my dizzy head. Wait here, my child, with patience, kneel in prayer the while. Ah, thou must needs the lady wed, or may I never leave my grave among the dead." So saying, she hobbled off with busy fear. The lovers' endless minutes slowly passed. The dame returned, and whispered in his ear to follow her, with aged eyes aghast from fright of dim espial. Safe at last, through many a dusky gallery, they gain the maiden's chamber, silken, hushed, and chaste, where Porphyro took covert, pleased amain. His poor guide hurried back with agues in her brain. Her faltering hand upon the balustrade, old Angela was feeling for the stair, when Madeline, St. Agnes' charmed maid, rose like a missioned spirit unaware. With silver tapers light and pious care, she turned and down the aged gossip led to a safe level matting. "Now prepare, young Porphyro, for gazing on that bed. She comes again, like ring-dove frayed and fled. Out went the taper as she hurried in, its little smoke in pallid moonshine died. She closed the door, she panted, all akin to spirits of the air and visions wide. No uttered syllable or woe betide. But to her heart was voluble, paining with eloquence her balmy side, as though a tongueless nightingale should swell her throat in vain, and die heart-stifled in her dell. A casement high and triple arched there was, all garlanded with carven imageries of fruits and flowers and bunches of knot-grass, and diamonded with panes of quaint device, innumerable of stains and splendid dyes, as are the tiger moth's deep damasked wings. And in the midst, 'mong thousand heraldries and twilight saints and dim emblazonings, a shielded scutcheon blushed with blood of queens and kings. Full on this casement shone the wintry moon, and threw warm gules on Madeline's fair breast, as down she knelt for heaven's grace and boon. Rose bloom fell on her hands together pressed, and on her silver cross soft amethyst, and on her hair a glory like a saint. She seemed a splendid angel newly dressed, save wings for heaven. Porphyro grew faint. She knelt, so pure a thing, so free from mortal taint. Anon his heart revives. Her vespers done, of all its wreathed pearls her hair she frees, unclasps her warmed jewels one by one, loosens her fragrant bodice, by degrees her rich attire creeps rustling to her knees. Half hidden like a mermaid in seaweed, pensive awhile she dreams awake, and sees in fancy fair Saint Agnes in her bed, but dares not look behind, or all the charm is fled. Soon, trembling in her soft and chilly nest, in sort of wakeful swoon, perplexed she lay, until the poppied warmth of sleep oppressed her soothed limbs, and soul fatigued away, flown like a thought until the morrow day. Blissfully havened both from joy and pain, clasped like a missile where swart Paynims pray, blinded alike from sunshine and from rain, as though a rose should shut and be a bud again. Stolen to this paradise, and so entranced, Porphyro gazed upon her empty dress, and listened to her breathing, if it chanced to wake into a slumberous tenderness, which, when he heard, that minute did he bless, and breathed himself. Then from the closet crept, noiseless as fear in a wide wilderness, and over the hushed carpet silent stepped, and 'tween the curtains peeped, where lo, how fast she slept. Then by the bedside, where the faded moon made a dim silver twilight, soft he set a table, and half anguished threw thereon a cloth of woven crimson, gold, and jet. Oh, for some drowsy Morphean amulet, the boisterous midnight festive clarion, the kettledrum and far-head clarionet affray his ears, though but in dying tone. The hall door shuts again, and all the noise is gone. And still she slept an azure-lidded sleep, in blanched linen, smooth and lavendered, while he from forth the closet brought a heap of candied apple, quince, and plum, and gourd, with jellies soother than the creamy curd, and lucent syrups tinct with cinnamon, manna and dates in argosy transferred from Fez, and spiced dainties every one from silken Samarcand to cedared Lebanon. These delicates he heaped with glowing hand on golden dishes, and in baskets bright of wreathed silver, sumptuous they stand in the retired quiet of the night, filling the chilly room with perfume light. And now, my love, my seraph fair, awake! Thou art my heaven, and I thine eremite. Open thine eyes for meek Saint Agnes' sake, or I shall drowse beside thee, so my soul doth ache. Thus whispering, his warm unnerved arm sank in her pillow. Shaded was her dream by the dusk curtains. 'Twas a midnight charm, impossible to melt as iced stream. The lustrous salvers in the moonlight gleam, broad golden fringe upon the carpet lies. It seemed he never, never could redeem from such a stedfast spell his lady's eyes. So mused awhile, entoiled in woofed fantasies. Awakening up, he took her hollow lute, tumultuous, and in chords that tenderest be, he played an ancient ditty long since mute, in Provence called La Belle Dame sans Merci, close to her ear touching the melody. Wherewith disturbed, she uttered a soft moan. He ceased. She panted quick, and suddenly her blue affrayed eyes wide open shone. Upon his knees he sank, pale as smooth sculptured stone. Her eyes were open, but she still beheld, now wide awake, the vision of her sleep. There was a painful change that nigh expelled the blisses of her dream so pure and deep, at which fair Madeline began to weep, and moan forth witless words with many a sigh, while still her gaze on Porphyro would keep, who knelt with joined hands and piteous eye, fearing to move or speak, she looked so dreamingly. "Ah, Porphyro," said she, "but even now thy voice was that sweet tremble in mine ear, made tuneable with every sweetest vow, and those sad eyes were spiritual and clear. How changed thou art! How pallid, chill, and drear! Give me that voice again, my Porphyro, those looks immortal, those complainings dear. O leave me not in this eternal woe, for if thou diest, my love, I know not where to go." Beyond a mortal man impassioned far, at these voluptuous accents he arose, ethereal flushed, and like a throbbing star, seen mid the sapphire heaven's deep repose. Into her dream he melted, as the rose blendeth its odor with the violet, solution sweet. Meantime the frost wind blows, like love's alarm pattering the sharp sleet against the window panes. St. Agnes' moon hath set. 'Tis dark, quick pattereth the flaw-blown sleet. This is no dream, my bride, my Madeline. 'Tis dark, the iced gusts still rave and beat. No dream! Alas, alas, and woe is mine! Porphyro will leave me here to fade and pine. Cruel, what traitor could thee hither bring? I curse not, for my heart is lost in thine. Though thou forsakest a deceived thing, a dove forlorn and lost, with sick unpruned wing. My Madeline, sweet dreamer, lovely bride, say may I be for aye thy vassal blest, thy beauty shield, heart-shaped and vermeil-dyed. Ah, silver shrine, here will I take my rest, after so many hours of toil and quest, a famished pilgrim, saved by miracle. Though I have found, I will not rob thy nest, saving of thy sweet self, if thou thinkest well to trust fair Madeline to no rude infidel. Hark! 'Tis an elfin storm from fairyland, of haggard seeming, but a boon indeed. Arise, arise, the morning is at hand. The bloated wassailers will never heed. Let us away, my love, with happy speed. There are no ears to hear, or eyes to see, drowned all in Rhenish, and the sleepy mead. Awake, arise, my love, and fearless be, for o'er the southern moors I have a home for thee. She hurried at his words, beset with fears, for there were sleeping dragons all around, at glaring watch perhaps, with ready spears. Down the wide stairs a darkling way they found. In all the house was heard no human sound. A chain-drooped lamp was flickering by each door. The arras, rich with horsemen, hawk, and hound, fluttered in the besieging wind's uproar, and the long carpets rose along the gusty floor. They glide like phantoms into the wide hall, like phantoms to the iron porch they glide, where lay the porter in uneasy sprawl, with a huge empty flagon by his side. The wakeful bloodhound rose and shook his hide, but his sagacious eye an inmate owns. By one and one the bolts full easy slide, the chains lie silent on the foot-worn stones. The key turns, and the door upon its hinges groans. And they are gone. Aye, ages long ago these lovers fled away into the storm. That night the Baron dreamt of many a woe, and all his warrior guests, with shade and form of witch and demon and large coffin worm, were long benightmared. Angela the old died palsy-twitched, with meagre face deform. The beadsman, after 1,000 aves told, for aye unsought for, slept among his ashes cold. End of The Eve of St. Agnes by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 5 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. The day is gone, and all its sweets are gone. The day is gone, and all its sweets are gone. Sweet voice, sweet lips, soft hand, and softer breast, warm breath, light whisper, tender semitone, bright eyes, accomplished shape, and languorous waist. Faded the flower and all its budded charms, faded the sight of beauty from my eyes, faded the shape of beauty from my arms, faded the voice, warmth, whiteness, paradise, vanished unseasonably at shut of eve, when the dusk holiday or holiday of fragrant curtained love begins to weave the woof of darkness thick for hid delight. But as I've read love's missal through to-day, he'll let me sleep, seeing I fast and pray. End of The Day is Gone, and All Its Sweets Are Gone. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 6 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Where be ye going, you Devon maid? Where be ye going, you Devon maid? And what have ye there in the basket? Ye tight little fairy, just fresh from the dairy, will ye give me some cream if I ask it? I love your meads, and I love your flowers, and I love your junkets mainly, but hind the door I love kissing more. Oh, look not so disdainly. I love your hills, and I love your dales, and I love your flocks a bleating, but oh, on the heather to lie together with both our hearts a beating. I'll put your basket all safe in a nook, your shawl I'll hang up on this willow, and we will sigh in the daisy's eye, and kiss on a grass-green pillow. End of Where Be Ye Going, You Devon Maid, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 7 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. After dark vapors have oppressed our plains. After dark vapors have oppressed our plains for a long dreary season, comes a day born of the gentle south, and clears away from the sick heavens all unseemly stains. The anxious month, relieving from its pains, takes as a long-lost right the feel of May. The eyelids with the passing coolness play, like rose leaves with the drip of summer rains. And calmest thoughts come round us, as of leaves budding, fruit ripening in stillness, autumn suns smiling at eve upon the quiet sheaves, sweet Sappho's cheek, a sleeping infant's breath, the gradual sand that through an hourglass runs, a woodland rivulet, a poet's death. End of After Dark Vapors Have Oppressed Our Plains, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 8 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Ode on a Grecian Urn. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme, what leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals, or of both, in Tempe or the dales of Arcady? What men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on, not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit, ditties of no tone. Fair youth beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal. Yet do not grieve, she cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. For ever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Ah, happy, happy boughs that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu, and happy melodist unwearied, forever piping songs, forever new. More happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadst thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands stressed? What little town by river or seashore, or mountain built with peaceful citadel, is emptied of this folk, this pious morn? And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. O Attic shape, fair attitude, with breed of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou, silent form, dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity. Cold pastoral, when old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. End of Ode on a Grecian Urn by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 9 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. O Solitude, if I must with thee dwell. O Solitude, if I must with thee dwell, let it not be among the jumbled heap of murky buildings. Climb with me the steep, Nature's observatory, whence the dell in flowery slopes, its river's crystal swell, may seem a span. Let me thy vigils keep 'mongst boughs pavilioned, where the deer's swift leap startles the wild bee from the foxglove bell. But though I'll gladly trace these scenes with thee, yet the sweet converse of an innocent mind, whose words are images of thoughts refined, is my soul's pleasure, and it sure must be almost the highest bliss of humankind, when to thy haunts two kindred spirits flee. End of O Solitude, if I must with thee dwell by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 10 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Keen, fitful gusts are whispering here and there. Keen, fitful gusts are whispering here and there among the bushes, half leafless and dry. The stars look very cold about the sky, and I have many miles on foot to fare. Yet feel I little of the cool, bleak air, or of the dead leaves rustling drearily, or of those silver lamps that burn on high, or of the distance from home's pleasant lair. For I am brimful of the friendliness that in a little cottage I have found, of fair-haired Milton's eloquent distress, and all his love for gentle Lycid drowned, of lovely Laura in her light green dress, and faithful Petrarch gloriously crowned. End of Keen, Fitful Gusts Are Whispering Here and There by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 11 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Ode. Bards of passion and of mirth, ye have left your souls on earth. Have ye souls in heaven too, double-lived in regions new? Yes, and those of heaven commune with the spheres of sun and moon, with the noise of fountains wondrous, and the parle of voices thunderous, with the whisper of heaven's trees, and one another in soft ease. Seated on Elysian lawns, browsed by none but Dian's fawns, underneath large bluebells tinted, where the daisies are rose-scented, and the rose herself has got perfume which on earth is not, where the nightingale doth sing not a senseless tranced thing, but divine melodious truth, philosophic numbers smooth, tales and golden histories of heaven and its mysteries. Thus ye live on high, and then on the earth ye live again, and the souls ye left behind you teach us here the way to find you, where your other souls are joying, never slumbered, never cloying. Here your earth-born souls still speak to mortals of their little week, of their sorrows and delights, of their passions and their spites, of their glory and their shame, what does strengthen and what maim. Thus ye teach us every day wisdom, though fled far away. Bards of passion and of mirth, ye have left your souls on earth. Ye have souls in heaven too, double-lived in regions new. End of Ode by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 12 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. When I Have Fears. When I have fears that I may cease to be, before my pen has gleaned my teeming brain, before high-piled books in charactery hold like rich garners the full ripened grain, when I behold upon the night's starred face huge cloudy symbols of a high romance, and think that I may never live to trace their shadows with the magic hand of chance. And when I feel, fair creature of an hour, that I shall never look upon thee more, never have relish in the fairy power of unreflecting love, then on the shore of the wide world I stand alone, and think, till love and fame to nothingness do sink. End of When I Have Fears by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 13 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Stanzas. In a drear-nighted December, too happy, happy tree, thy branches ne'er remember their green felicity. The north cannot undo them with a sleety whistle through them, nor frozen thawings glue them from budding at the prime. In a drear-nighted December, too happy, happy brook, thy bubblings ne'er remember Apollo's summer look, but with a sweet forgetting they stay their crystal fretting, never, never petting about the frozen time. Ah, would 'twere so with many a gentle girl and boy! But were there ever any writhed not at passed joy? To know the change and feel it, when there is none to heal it, nor numbed sense to steal it, was never said in rhyme. End of Stanzas by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 14 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. On first looking into Chapman's Homer. Much have I travelled in the realms of gold, and many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told, that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet did I never breathe its pure serene, till I heard Chapman speak out loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies, when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. End of On First Looking into Chapman's Homer by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 15 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Isabella, or the Pot of Basil. A story from Boccaccio. Fair Isabel, poor simple Isabel, Lorenzo, a young palmer in love's eye. They could not in the selfsame mansion dwell without some stir of heart, some malady. They could not sit at meals, but feel how well it soothed each to be the other by. They could not sure beneath the same roof sleep, but to each other dream, and nightly weep. With every morn their love grew tenderer, with every eve deeper and tenderer still. He might not in house, field, or garden stir, but her full shape would all his seeing fill. And his continual voice was pleasanter to her than noise of trees or hidden rill. Her lute string gave an echo of his name. She spoilt her half-done broidery with the same. He knew whose gentle hand was at the latch before the door had given her to his eyes. And from her chamber window he would catch her beauty farther than the falcon spies. And constant as her vespers would he watch, because her face was turned to the same skies, and with sick longing all the night outwear to hear her morning step upon the stair. A whole long month of May in this sad plight made their cheeks paler by the break of June. To-morrow will I bow to my delight, to-morrow will I ask my lady's boon. Oh, may I never see another night, Lorenzo, if thy lips breathe not love's tune. So spake they to their pillows, but alas, honeyless days and days did he let pass, until sweet Isabella's untouched cheek fell sick within the rose's just domain, fell thin as a young mother's who doth seek by every lull to cool her infant's pain. How ill she is, said he, I may not speak, and yet I will, and tell my love all plain. If looks speak love laws, I will drink her tears, and at the least will startle off her cares. So said he one fair morning, and all day his heart beat awfully against his side, and to his heart he inwardly did pray for power to speak. But still the ruddy tide stifled his voice, and pulsed resolve away, fevered his high conceit of such a bride, yet brought him to the meekness of a child. Alas, when passion is both meek and wild. So once more he had waked and anguished a dreary night of love and misery, if Isabel's quick eye had not been wed to every symbol on his forehead high. She saw it waxing very pale and dead, and straight all flushed, so lisped tenderly, Lorenzo. Here she ceased her timid quest, but in her tone and look he read the rest. O Isabella, I can half perceive that I may speak my grief into thine ear. If thou didst ever anything believe, believe how I love thee, believe how near my soul is to its doom. I would not grieve thy hand by unwelcome pressing, would not fear thine eyes by gazing. But I cannot live another night, and not by passion shrive. Love, thou art leading me from wintry cold, lady, thou leadest me to summer clime, and I must taste the blossoms that unfold in its ripe warmth this gracious morning time. So said, his erewhile timid lips grew bold, and poesied with hers in dewy rhyme. Great bliss was with them, and great happiness grew like a lusty flower in June's caress. Parting, they seemed to tread upon the air, twin roses by the zephyr blown apart, only to meet again more close, and share the inward fragrance of each other's heart. She, to her chamber gone, a ditty fair sang of delicious love and honeyed dart. He with light steps went up a western hill, and bade the sun farewell, and joyed his fill. All close they met again before the dusk had taken from the stars its pleasant veil. All close they met, all eves, before the dusk had taken from the stars its pleasant veil, close in a bower of hyacinth and musk, unknown of any, free from whispering tale. Ah, better had it been forever so, than idle ears should pleasure in their woe. Were they unhappy then? It cannot be. Too many tears for lovers have been shed, too many sighs give we to them in fee, too much of pity after they are dead. Too many doleful stories do we see, whose matter in bright gold were best to be read. Except in such a page where Theseus' spouse over the pathless waves toward him bows. But for the general award of love, the little sweet doth kill much bitterness. Though Dido's silent is in undergrove, and Isabella's was a great distress, though young Lorenzo in warm Indian clove was not embalmed, this truth is not the less. Even bees, the little almsmen of spring bowers, know there is richest juice in poison flowers. With her 2 brothers this fair lady dwelt, enriched from ancestral merchandise, and for them many a weary hand did swelt in tortured mines and noisy factories, and many once proud quivered loins did melt in blood from stinging whip. With hollow eyes many all day in dazzling rivers stood, to take the rich oared driftings of the flood. For them the Ceylon diver held his breath, and went all naked to the hungry shark. For them his ears gushed blood. For them in death the seal on the cold ice with piteous bark lay full of darts. For them alone did see the 1,000 men in troubles wide and dark. Half ignorant they turned an easy wheel that set sharp racks at work to pinch and peel. Why were they proud? Because their marble founts gushed with more pride than do a wretch's tears? Why were they proud? Because fair orange mounts were of more soft descent than lazar stairs? Why were they proud? Because red-lined accounts were richer than the songs of Grecian years? Why were they proud? Again we ask aloud, why in the name of glory were they proud? Yet were these Florentines as self-retired in hungry pride and gainful cowardice as 2 close Hebrews in that land inspired, paled in and vineyarded from beggar spies, the hawks of shipmast forests, the untired and panniered mules for ducats and old lies, quick cat's paws in the generous stray away, great wits in Spanish, Tuscan, and Malay. How was it these same ledgermen could spy fair Isabella in her downy nest? How could they find out in Lorenzo's eye a straying from his toil? Hot Egypt's pest into their vision, covetous and sly. How could these money bags see east and west? Yet so they did, and every dealer fair must see behind, as doth the hunted hare. O eloquent and famed Boccaccio, of thee we now should ask forgiving boon, and of thy spicy myrtles as they blow, and of thy roses amorous of the moon, and of thy lilies that do paler grow, now they can no more hear thy gittern's tune, for venturing syllables that ill beseem the quiet glooms of such a piteous theme. Grant thou a pardon here, and then the tale shall move on soberly, as it is meet. There is no other crime, no mad assail, to make old prose in modern rhyme more sweet. But it is done. Succeed the verse or fail, to honor thee, and thy gone spirit greet, to stead thee as a verse in English tongue, an echo of thee in the north wind sung. These brethren, having found by many signs what love Lorenzo for their sister had, and how she loved him too, each unconfines his bitter thoughts to other, well nigh mad that he, the servant of their trade designs, should in their sister's love be blithe and glad, when 'twas their plan to coax her by degrees to some high noble and his olive trees. And many a jealous conference had they, and many times they bit their lips alone, before they fixed upon a surest way to make the youngster for his crime atone. And at the last these men of cruel clay cut Merci with a sharp knife to the bone, for they resolved in some forest dim to kill Lorenzo, and there bury him. So on a pleasant morning, as he leant into the sunrise o'er the balustrade of the garden terrace, towards him they bent their footing through the dews, and to him said, "You seem there in the quiet of content, Lorenzo, and we are most loath to invade calm speculation. But if you are wise, bestride your steed while cold is in the skies. To-day we purpose, aye, this hour we mount, to spur 3 leagues towards the Apennine. Come down, we pray thee, ere the hot sun count his dewy rosary on the eglantine." Lorenzo, courteously, as he was wont, bowed a fair greeting to these serpents' whine, and went in haste to get in readiness, with belt and spur and bracing huntsman's dress. And as he to the courtyard passed along, each 3rd step did he pause, and listened oft if he could hear his lady's matin song, or the light whisper of her footstep soft. And as he thus over his passion hung, he heard a laugh full musical aloft, when looking up he saw her features bright smile through an indoor lattice, all delight. "Love Isabel," said he, "I was in pain lest I should miss to bid thee a good morrow. Ah, what if I should lose thee, when so fain I am to stifle all the heavy sorrow of a poor 3 hours' absence. But we'll gain out of the amorous dark what day doth borrow. Good-bye, I'll soon be back." "Good-bye," said she, and as he went she chanted merrily. So the 2 brothers and their murdered man rode past fair Florence, to where Arno's stream gurgles through straitened banks, and still doth fan itself with dancing bulrush, and the bream keeps head against the freshets. Sick and wan the brothers' faces in the ford did seem, Lorenzo's flush with love. They passed the water into a forest quiet for the slaughter. There was Lorenzo slain and buried in. There in that forest did his great love cease. Ah, when a soul doth thus its freedom win, it aches in loneliness, is ill at peace, as the brake-covered bloodhounds of such sin. They dipped their swords in the water, and did tease their horses homeward with convulsed spur, each richer by his being a murderer. They told their sister how, with sudden speed, Lorenzo had taken ship for foreign lands, because of some great urgency and need in their affairs, requiring trusty hands. Poor girl, put on thy stifling widow's weed, and scape at once from hope's accursed bands. To-day thou wilt not see him, nor to-morrow, and the next day will be a day of sorrow. She weeps alone for pleasures not to be. Sorely she wept until the night came on, and then, instead of love, oh misery, she brooded o'er the luxury alone. His image in the dusk she seemed to see, and to the silence made a gentle moan, spreading her perfect arms upon the air, and on her couch low murmuring, "Where, oh, where?" But selfishness, love's cousin, held not long its fiery vigil in her single breast. She fretted for the golden hour, and hung upon the time with feverish unrest. Not long, for soon into her heart a throng of higher occupants, a richer zest came tragic, passion not to be subdued, and sorrow for her love in travels rude. In the middays of autumn, on their eaves, the breath of winter comes from far away, and the sick west continually bereaves of some gold tinge, and plays a roundelay of death among the bushes and the leaves, to make all bare before he dares to stray from his north cavern. So sweet Isabel, by gradual decay, from beauty fell. Because Lorenzo came not. Oftentimes she asked her brothers, with an eye all pale, striving to be itself, what dungeon climes could keep him off so long. They spake a tale time after time to quiet her. Their crimes came on them like a smoke from Hinnom's vale, and every night in dreams they groaned aloud to see their sister in her snowy shroud. And she had died in drowsy ignorance, but for a thing more deadly dark than all. It came like a fierce potion, drunk by chance, which saves a sick man from the feathered pall for some few gasping moments, like a lance waking an Indian from his cloudy hall with cruel pierce, and bringing him again sense of the gnawing fire at heart and brain. It was a vision. In the drowsy gloom, the dull of midnight, at her couch's foot, Lorenzo stood and wept. The forest tomb had marred his glossy hair, which once could shoot lustre into the sun, and put cold doom upon his lips, and taken the soft lute from his lorn voice, and past his loamed ears had made a miry channel for his tears. Strange sound it was, when the pale shadow spake, for there was striving in its piteous tongue to speak as when on earth it was awake, and Isabella on its music hung. Languor there was in it, and tremulous shake, as in a palsied druid's harp unstrung, and through it moaned a ghostly undersong, like hoarse night gusts sepulchral briars among. Its eyes, though wild, were still all dewy bright with love, and kept all phantom fear aloof from the poor girl by magic of their light, the while it did unthread the horrid woof of the late darkened time, the murderous spite of pride and avarice, the dark pine roof in the forest, and the sodden turfed dell, where, without any word, from stabs he fell. Saying, moreover, "Isabel, my sweet, red whortleberries droop above my head, and a large flint stone weighs upon my feet. Around me beeches and high chestnuts shed their leaves and prickly nuts. A sheepfold bleat comes from beyond the river to my bed. Go shed one tear upon my heather bloom, and it shall comfort me within the tomb. I am a shadow now, alas, alas, upon the skirts of human nature dwelling alone. I chant alone the holy mass, while little sounds of life around me knelling, and glossy bees at noon do fieldward pass, and many a chapel bell the hour is telling, paining me through. Those sounds grow strange to me, and thou art distant in humanity. I know what was, I feel full well what is, and I should rage if spirits could go mad. Though I forget the taste of earthly bliss, that paleness warms my grave, as though I had a seraph chosen from the bright abyss to be my spouse. Thy paleness makes me glad, thy beauty grows upon me, and I feel a greater love through all my essence steal. The spirit mourned, Adieu, dissolved, and left the atom darkness in a slow turmoil, as when of healthful midnight sleep bereft, thinking on rugged hours and fruitless toil, we put our eyes into a pillowy cleft, and see the spangly gloom froth up and boil. It made sad Isabella's eyelids ache, and in the dawn she started up awake. Ah, said she, I knew not this hard life. I thought the worst was simple misery. I thought some fate with pleasure or with strife portioned us, happy days or else to die. But there is crime, a brother's bloody knife. Sweet spirit, thou hast schooled my infancy. I'll visit thee for this, and kiss thine eyes, and greet thee morn and even in the skies. When the full morning came, she had devised how she might secret to the forest high, how she might find the clay so dearly prized, and sing to it one latest lullaby. How her short absence might be unsurmised, while she the inmost of the dream would try. Resolved, she took with her an aged nurse, and went into that dismal forest hearse. See, as they creep along the river side, how she doth whisper to that aged dame, and after looking around the champaign wide, shows her a knife. What feverous hectic flame burns in thee, child? What good can thee betide that thou shouldst smile again? The evening came, and they had found Lorenzo's earthy bed. The flint was there, the berries at his head. Who hath not loitered in a green churchyard, and let his spirit, like a demon mole, work through the clayey soil and gravel hard, to see skull, coffined bones, and funeral stole, pitying each form that hungry death hath marred, and filling it once more with human soul? Ah, that is holiday to what was felt when Isabella by Lorenzo knelt. She gazed into the fresh-thrown mould, as though one glance did fully all its secrets tell. Clearly she saw, as other eyes would know pale limbs at bottom of a crystal well. Upon the murderous spot she seemed to grow, like to a native lily of the dell. Then with her knife, all sudden, she began to dig more fervently than misers can. Soon she turned up a soiled glove, whereon her silk had played in purple fantasies. She kissed it with a lip more chill than stone, and put it in her bosom, where it dries, and freezes utterly unto the bone those dainties made to still an infant's cries. Then gan she work again, nor stayed her care but to throw back at times her veiling hair. That old nurse stood beside her wondering, until her heart felt pity to the core at sight of such a dismal laboring. And so she kneeled with her locks all hoar, and put her lean hands to the horrid thing. 3 hours they labored at this travail sore. At last they felt the kernel of the grave, and Isabella did not stamp and rave. Ah, wherefore all this wormy circumstance? Why linger at the yawning tomb so long? Oh, for the gentleness of old romance, the simple plaining of a minstrel's song! Fair reader, at the old tale take a glance, for here in truth it doth not well belong to speak. Oh, turn thee to the very tale, and taste the music of that vision pale. With duller steel and the Persean sword they cut away no formless monster's head, but one whose gentleness did well accord with death as life. The ancient harps have said, love never dies, but lives, immortal lord. If love impersonate was ever dead, Pale Isabel kissed it, and low moaned. 'Twas love, cold, dead indeed, but not dethroned. In anxious secrecy they took it home, and then the prize was all for Isabel. She combed its wild hair with a golden comb, and all around each eye's sepulchral cell pointed each fringed lash. The smeared loam with tears, as chilly as a dripping well, she drenched away. And still she combed and kept sighing all day, and still she kissed and wept. Then in a silken scarf, sweet with the dews of precious flowers plucked in Araby, and divine liquids come with odorous ooze, through the cold serpent pipe refreshfully she wrapped it up, and for its tomb did choose a garden pot, wherein she laid it by, and covered it with mold, and o'er it set sweet basil, which her tears kept ever wet. And she forgot the stars, the moon and sun, and she forgot the blue above the trees, and she forgot the dells where waters run, and she forgot the chilly autumn breeze. She had no knowledge when the day was done, and the new morn she saw not, but in peace hung over her sweet basil evermore, and moistened it with tears unto the core. And so she ever fed it with thin tears, whence thick and green and beautiful it grew, so that it smelt more balmy than its peers of basil tufts in Florence, for it drew nurture besides, and life from human fears, from the fast mouldering head there shut from view, so that the jewel, safely casketed, came forth, and in perfumed leaflets spread. O Melancholy, linger here a while. O Music, Music, breathe despondingly. O Echo, Echo, from some sombre isle unknown, Lethean, sigh to us, O sigh. Spirits in grief, lift up your heads and smile. Lift up your heads, sweet spirits, heavily, and make a pale light in your cypress glooms, tinting with silver wan your marble tombs. Moan hither, all ye syllables of woe, from the deep throat of sad Melpomene. Through bronzed lyre in tragic order go, and touch the strings into a mystery. Sound mournfully upon the winds and low, for simple Isabel is soon to be among the dead. She withers like a palm cut by an Indian for its juicy balm. O leave the palm to wither by itself. Let not quick winter chill its dying hour. It may not be. Those Baalites of pelf, her brethren, noted the continual shower from her dead eyes, and many a curious elf among her kindred wondered that such dower of youth and beauty should be thrown aside by one marked out to be a noble's bride. And furthermore, her brethren wondered much why she sat drooping by the basil green, and why it flourished as by magic touch. Greatly they wondered what the thing might mean. They could not surely give belief that such a very nothing would have power to wean her from her own fair youth and pleasures gay, and even remembrance of her love's delay. Therefore they watched a time when they might sift this hidden whim, and long they watched in vain, for seldom did she go to chapel shrift, and seldom felt she any hunger pain, and when she left, she hurried back as swift as bird on wing to breast its eggs again, and patient as a hen bird sat her there beside her basil, weeping through her hair. Yet they contrived to steal the basil pot, and to examine it in secret place. The thing was vile with green and livid spot, and yet they knew it was Lorenzo's face. The guerdon of their murder they had got, and so left Florence in a moment's space, never to turn again. Away they went with blood upon their heads to banishment. O Melancholy, turn thine eyes away. O music, music, breathe despondingly! O echo, echo, on some other day from isles Lethean, sigh to us, O sigh! Spirits of grief, sing not your well away, for Isabel, sweet Isabel, will die a death too lone and incomplete, now they have ta'en away her Basil sweet. Piteous she looked on dead and senseless things, asking for her lost Basil amorously, and with melodious chuckle in the strings of her lorn voice, she oftentimes would cry after the pilgrim in his wanderings, to ask him where her Basil was, and why 'twas hid from her. "For cruel 'tis," said she, "to steal my Basil pot away from me." And so she pined, and so she died forlorn, imploring for her Basil to the last. No heart was there in Florence but did mourn in pity of her love so overcast. And a sad ditty of this story borne from mouth to mouth through all the country past. Still is the burthen sung, O cruelty, to steal my Basil pot away from me. End of Isabella, or the Pot of Basil, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 16 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Happy is England. Happy is England! I could be content to see no other verdure than its own, to feel no other breezes than are blown through its tall woods with high romances blent. Yet do I sometimes feel a languishment for skies Italian, and an inward groan to sit upon an Alp as on a throne, and half forget what world or worldling meant. Happy is England, sweet her artless daughters, enough their simple loveliness for me, enough their whitest arms in silence clinging. Yet do I often warmly burn to see beauties of deeper glance, and hear their singing, and float with them about the summer waters. End of Happy is England, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 17 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. To Fanny. I cry your mercy, pity, love. I love. Merciful love that tantalizes not, one-thoughted, never-wandering, guileless love, unmasked, and being seen, without a blot. Oh, let me have thee whole, all be mine. That shape, that fairness, that sweet minor zest of love, your kiss, those hands, those eyes divine, that warm, white, lucent, million-pleasured breast, yourself, your soul, in pity give me all, withhold no atom's atom, or I die. Or living on, perhaps, your wretched thrall, forget, in the mist of idle misery, life's purposes, the pallet of my mind losing its gust, and my ambition blind. End of To Fanny, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 18 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. To one who has been long in city, Pent. To one who has been long in city pent, 'tis very sweet to look into the fair and open face of heaven, to breathe a prayer full in the smile of the blue firmament. Who is more happy when with heart's content, fatigued, he sinks into some pleasant lair of wavy grass, and reads a debonair and gentle tale of love and languishment? Returning home at evening, with an ear catching the notes of Philomel, an eye watching the sailing cloudlet's bright career, he mourns that day so soon has glided by, e'en like the passage of an angel's tear that falls through the clear ether silently. End of To One Who Has Been Long in City Pent, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 19 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Ode on Melancholy. No, no, go not to Lethe, neither twist wolfsbane tight-rooted for its poisonous wine, nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade, ruby grape of Proserpine. Make not your rosary of yew-berries, nor let the beetle nor the death-moth be your mournful Psyche, nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mysteries. For shade to shade will come too drowsily, and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven, like a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies. Or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand, and let her rave, and feed deep, deep upon her peerless eyes. She dwells with beauty, beauty that must die, and joy whose hand is ever at his lips bidding adieu, and aching pleasure nigh turning to poison while the bee-mouth sips. Aye, in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy has her sovereign shrine, though seen of none, save him whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate fine. His soul shall taste the sadness of her might, and be among her cloudy trophies hung. End of Ode on Melancholy, by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 20 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. On Fame. Sonnet 1. Fame, like a wayward girl, will still be coy to those who woo her with too slavish knees, but makes surrender to some thoughtless boy, and dotes the more upon a heart at ease. She is a gypsy, will not speak to those who have not learnt to be content without her, a jilt, whose ear was never whispered close, who thinks they scandal her who talk about her. A very gypsy is she, Nilus born, sister-in-law to jealous Potiphar. Ye love-sick bards, repay her scorn for scorn. Ye artists love-lorn, madmen that ye are, make your best bow to her, and bid adieu. Then, if she likes it, she will follow you. On Fame, Sonnet 2. You cannot eat your cake and have it too. Proverb. How fevered is the man who cannot look upon his mortal days with temperate blood, who vexes all the leaves of his life's book, and robs his fair name of its maidenhood. It is as if the rose should pluck herself, or the ripe plum finger its misty bloom, as if a naiad, like a meddling elf, should darken her pure grot with muddy gloom. But the rose leaves herself upon the briar for winds to kiss and grateful bees to feed, and the ripe plum still wears its dim attire. The undisturbed lake has crystal space. Why then should man, teasing the world for grace, spoil his salvation for a fierce miscreed? End of On Fame by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 21 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. On the Grasshopper and Cricket. The poetry of earth is never dead. When all the birds are faint with the hot sun, and hide in cooling trees, a voice will run from hedge to hedge about the new-mown mead. That is the grasshopper's. He takes the lead in summer luxury. He has never done with his delights, for when tired out with fun, he rests at ease beneath some pleasant weed. The poetry of earth is ceasing never. On a lone winter evening, when the frost has wrought a silence, from the stove there shrills the cricket's song, in warmth increasing ever, and seems to one in drowsiness half lost, the grasshopper's among some grassy hills. End of On the Grasshopper and Cricket by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 22 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. To Autumn. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with the sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the necked swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. End of To Autumn by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 23 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Fill for me a brimming bowl. Fill for me a brimming bowl, and let me in it drown my soul, but put therein some drug designed to banish woman from my mind. For I want not the stream inspiring that heats the sense with lewd desiring, but I want as deep a draught as e'er from Lethe's waves was quaffed, from my despairing breast to charm the image of the fairest form that e'er my reveling eyes beheld, that e'er my wandering fancy spelled. 'Tis vain, away I cannot chase the melting softness of that face, the beaminess of those bright eyes, that breast, earth's only paradise. My sight will never more be blest, for all I see has lost its zest, nor with delight can I explore the classic page, the muse's lore. Had she but known how beat my heart, and with one smile relieved its smart, I should have felt the sweet relief, I should have felt the joy of grief. Yet as a Tuscan mid the snow of Lapland thinks on sweet Arno, even so forever shall she be the halo of my memory. End of Fill for Me a Brimming Bowl by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 24 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. How many bards gild the lapses of time? How many bards gild the lapses of time! A few of them have ever been the food of my delighted fancy. I could brood over their beauties, earthly or sublime, and often, when I sit me down to rhyme, these will in throngs before my mind intrude. But no confusion, no disturbance rude do they occasion, 'tis a pleasing chime. So the unnumbered sounds that evening store, the songs of birds, the whispering of the leaves, the voice of waters, the great bell that heaves with solemn sound, and thousand others more that distance of recognizance bereaves, makes pleasing music, and not wild uproar. End of How Many Bards Gild the Lapses of Time by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 25 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Bright Star, Would I Were Steadfast as Thou Art. Bright star, would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters, at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft-fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest, still, still to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. End of Bright Star, Would I Were Steadfast as Thou Art by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 26 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. To Hope. When by my solitary hearth I sit, and hateful thoughts enwrap my soul in gloom, when no fair dreams before my mind's eye flit, and the bare heath of life presents no bloom, sweet Hope, ethereal balm upon me shed, and wave thy silver pinions o'er my head. Whene'er I wander at the fall of night, where woven boughs shut out the moon's bright ray, should sad despondency my musings fright, and frown to drive fair cheerfulness away, peep with the moonbeams through the leafy roof, and keep that fiend despondence far aloof. Should disappointment, parent of despair, strive for her son to seize my careless heart, when like a cloud he sits upon the air, preparing on his spell-bound prey to dart, chase him away, sweet Hope, with visage bright, and fright him as the morning frightens night. Whene'er the fate of those I hold most dear tells to my fearful breast a tale of sorrow, O bright-eyed Hope, my morbid fancy cheer, let me awhile thy sweetest comforts borrow, thy heaven-born radiance around me shed, and wave thy silver pinions o'er my head. Should e'er unhappy love my bosom pain, from cruel parents or relentless fair, O let me think it is not quite in vain to sigh out sonnets to the midnight air. Sweet Hope, ethereal balm upon me shed, and wave thy silver pinions o'er my head. In the long vista of the years to roll, let me not see our country's honor fade. O let me see our land retain her soul, her pride, her freedom, and not freedom's shade. From thy bright eyes unusual brightness shed, beneath thy pinions canopy my head. Let me not see the patriot's high bequest, great liberty, how great in plain attire, with the base purple of a court oppressed, bowing her head and ready to expire. But let me see thee stoop from heaven on wings that fill the skies with silver glitterings. And as in sparkling majesty a star gilds the bright summit of some gloomy cloud, brightening the half-veiled face of heaven afar, so, when dark thoughts my boding spirit shroud, sweet Hope, celestial influence round me shed, waving thy silver pinions o'er my head. End of To Hope by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 27 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. On the Sonnet. If by dull rhymes our English must be chained, and like Andromeda, the sonnet sweet, fettered, in spite of painted loveliness, let us find out, if we must be constrained, sandals more interwoven and complete to fit the naked foot of poesy. Let us inspect the lyre and weigh the stress of every chord, and see what may be gained by ear industrious and attention meet. Misers of sound and syllable, no less than Midas of his coinage, let us be jealous of dead leaves in the bay wreath crown. So, if we may not let the Muse be free, she will be bound with garlands of her own. End of On the Sonnet by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 28 of John Keats, Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Ode to a Nightingale. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and lethywards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thy happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep-delved earth, tasting of Flora and the country green, dance and Provençal song and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful Hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim, and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink, and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Fade far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known. The weariness, the fever, and the fret here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad last gray hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin, and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his pards, but on the viewless wings of poesy, though the dull brain perplexes and retards. Already with thee, tender is the night, and haply the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but in embalmed darkness guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Darkling I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to cease upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sod. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the selfsame song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when sick for home she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that ofttimes hath charmed magic casements opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn. Forlorn! The very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu! The fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu! Thy plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision, or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep? End of Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 29 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Lamia, Part 1. Upon a time, before the fairy broods drove nymph and satyr from the prosperous woods, before King Oberon's bright diadem, sceptre, and mantle, clasped with dewy gem, frighted away the dryads and the fauns from rushes green, and brakes, and cowslipped lawns, the ever-smitten Hermes, empty left his golden throne, bent warm on amorous theft. From high Olympus had he stolen light on this side of Jove's clouds, to escape the sight of his great summoner, and made retreat into a forest on the shores of Crete. For somewhere in that sacred island dwelt a nymph, to whom all hoofed satyrs knelt, at whose white feet the languid Tritons poured pearls, while on land they withered and adored. Fast by the springs where she to bathe was wont, and in those meads where sometime she might haunt, were strewn rich gifts, unknown to any muse, though Fancy's casket were unlocked to choose. Ah, what a world of love was at her feet! So Hermes thought, and a celestial heat burnt from his winged heels to either ear, that from a whiteness, as the lily clear, blushed into roses mid his golden hair, fallen in jealous curls about his shoulders bare. From vale to vale, from wood to wood he flew, breathing upon the flowers his passion new, and wound with many a river to its head, to find where this sweet nymph prepared her secret bed. In vain, the sweet nymph might nowhere be found, and so he rested on the lonely ground, pensive and full of painful jealousies of the wood gods and even the very trees. There as he stood, he heard a mournful voice, such as once heard in gentle heart destroys all pain but pity. Thus the lone voice spake: "When from this wreathed tomb shall I awake? When move in a sweet body fit for life, and love, and pleasure, and the ruddy strife of hearts and lips? Ah, miserable me!" The god, dove-footed, glided silently round bush and tree, soft brushing in his speed the taller grasses and full flowering weed, until he found a palpitating snake, bright and cirque-couchant in a dusky brake. She was a Gordian shape of dazzling hue, vermilion spotted, golden, green, and blue, striped like a zebra, freckled like a pard, eyed like a peacock, and all crimson barred, and full of silver moons, that as she breathed, dissolved, or brighter shone, or interwreathed their lustres with the gloomier tapestries. So rainbow-sided, touched with miseries, she seemed at once some penanced lady elf, some demon's mistress, or the demon's self. Upon her crest she wore a wannish fire, sprinkled with stars, like Ariadne's tire. Her head was serpent, but ah, bittersweet, she had a woman's mouth, with all its pearls complete. And for her eyes, what could such eyes do there, but weep and weep that they were born so fair? as Proserpine still weeps for her Sicilian heir. Her throat was serpent, but the words she spake came as through bubbling honey for love's sake, and thus, while Hermes on his pinions lay, like a stooped falcon ere he takes his prey. Fair Hermes, crowned with feathers, fluttering light, I had a splendid dream of thee last night. I saw thee sitting on a throne of gold among the gods upon Olympus old, the only sad one, for thou didst not hear the soft lute-fingered Muses chaunting clear, nor even Apollo when he sang alone, deaf to his throbbing throat's long, long melodious moan. I dreamt I saw thee, robed in purple flakes, break amorous through the clouds as morning breaks, and swiftly as a bright Phoebean dart strike for the Cretan isle, and here thou art. Too gentle Hermes, hast thou found the maid? Whereat the star of Lethe not delayed his rosy eloquence, and thus inquired, Thou smooth-lipped serpent, surely high inspired, thou beauteous wreath with melancholy eyes, possess whatever bliss thou canst devise, telling me only where my nymph is fled, where she doth breathe. Bright planet, thou hast said, returned the snake, but seal with oaths, fair god. I swear, said Hermes, by my serpent rod, and by thine eyes, and by thy starry crown. Light flew his earnest words, among the blossoms blown. Then thus again the brilliance feminine, Too frail of heart for this lost nymph of thine, Free as the air, invisibly she strays About these thornless wilds, her pleasant days She tastes unseen, unseen her nimble feet Leave traces in the grass and flowers sweet. From weary tendrils and bowed branches green She plucks the fruit unseen, she bathes unseen, and by my power is her beauty veiled, To keep it unaffronted, unassailed By the love glances of unlovely eyes Of satyrs, fauns, and bleared Silenus' sighs. Pale grew her immortality for woe of all these lovers, and she grieved so, I took compassion on her, bade her steep her hair in weird syrups that would keep her loveliness invisible, yet free to wander as she loves in liberty. Thou shalt behold her, Hermes, thou alone, if thou wilt, as thou swearest, grant my boon. Then once again the charmed god began an oath, and through the serpent's ears it ran, warm, tremulous, devout, Psalterian. Ravished she lifted her Circean head, blushed a live damask, and swift lisping said, I was a woman, let me have once more a woman's shape, and charming as before. I love a youth of Corinth. Oh, the bliss! Give me my woman's form, and place me where he is. Stoop, Hermes, let me breathe upon thy brow, and thou shalt see thy sweet nymph even now. The god on half-shut feathers sank serene. She breathed upon his eyes, and swift was seen Of both the guarded nymph near smiling on the green. It was no dream, or say a dream it was. Real are the dreams of gods, and smoothly pass their pleasures in a long immortal dream. One warm flushed moment hovering it might seem, Dashed by the wood nymph's beauty, so he burned. Then lighting on the printless verdure, turned to the swooned serpent, and with languid arm delicate put to proof the lithe Caducean charm. So done, upon the nymph his eyes he bent, Full of adoring tears and blandishment, and towards her stepped. She, like a moon in wane, faded before him, cowered, nor could restrain her fearful sobs, self-folding like a flower that faints into itself at evening hour. But the god, fostering her chilled hand, she felt the warmth, her eyelids opened bland, and like new flowers at morning song of bees, bloomed, and gave up her honey to the leas. Into the green recessed woods they flew, nor grew they pale as mortal lovers do. Left to herself, the serpent now began to change. Her elfin blood in madness ran, her mouth foamed, and the grass therewith besprent withered at dew so sweet and virulent. Her eyes in torture fixed, and anguish drear, hot, glazed, and wide, with lid lashes all sear, flashed phosphor and sharp sparks, without one cooling tear. The colors all inflamed throughout her train, she writhed about, convulsed with scarlet pain. A deep Vulcanian yellow took the place of all her milder mooned body's grace, and as the lava ravishes the mead, spoilt all her silver mail and golden breed, made gloom of all her freckling streaks and bars, eclipsed her crescents and licked up her stars, so that in moments few she was undressed of all her sapphires, greens, and amethyst, and rubious argent. Of all these bereft, nothing but pain and ugliness were left. Still shone her crown; that vanished, also she melted, and disappeared as suddenly, and in the air her new voice luting soft cried, "Lycius, gentle Lycius!" Borne aloft with the bright mists about the mountains hoar, these words dissolved, Crete's forests heard no more. Whither fled Lamia, now a lady bright, a full-born beauty new and exquisite? She fled into that valley they pass o'er, who go to Corinth from Cenchrus' shore, and rested at the foot of those wild hills, the rugged founts of the Parian rills, and of that other ridge whose barren back stretches with all its mist and cloudy wrack southwestward to Cleone. There she stood, about a young bird's flutter from a wood, fair on a sloping green of mossy tread, by a clear pool, wherein she passioned to see herself escape from so sore ills, while her robes flaunted with the daffodils. Ah, happy Lycius! For she was a maid more beautiful than ever twisted braid, or sighed, or blushed, or on spring-flowered lea spread a green kirtle to the minstrelsy. A virgin purest lipped, yet in the lore of love deep learned to the red heart's core. Not 1 hour old, yet of sciential brain to unperplex bliss from its neighbor pain. Define their pettish limits, and estrange their points of contact, and swift counterchange, intrigue with a specious chaos, and dispart its most ambiguous atoms with sure art. As though in Cupid's college she had spent sweet days, a lovely graduate, still unshunt, and kept his rosy terms in idle languishment. Why this fair creature chose so fairily by the wayside to linger, we shall see. But first 'tis fit to tell how she can muse and dream, when in the serpent prison house of all she list, strange or magnificent, however, where she willed her spirit went, whether to faint Elysium, or where down through tress-lifting waves the Nereids fair wind into Thetis' bower by many a pearly stair, or where god Bacchus drains his cups divine, stretched out at ease beneath the glutinous pine, or where in Pluto's gardens palatine Mulciper's columns gleam in fair Piazzian line, and sometimes into cities she would send her dream, with feast and rioting to blend. And once, while among mortals dreaming thus, she saw the young Corinthian Lycius charioting foremost in the envious race, like a young Jove with calm uneager face, and fell into a swooning love of him. Now on the moth time of that evening dim, he would return that way, as well she knew, to Corinth from the shore. for freshly blew the eastern soft wind, and his galley now grated the keystones with her brazen prow in Port Cincreus from Aegina Isle, fresh anchored, whither he had been awhile to sacrifice to Jove, whose temple there waits with high marble doors for blood and incense rare. Jove heard his vows, and bettered his desire, for by some freakful chance he made retire from his companions, and set forth to walk, perhaps grown wearied of their Corinth talk. Over the solitary hills he fared, thoughtless at first, but ere eve's star appeared, his fantasy was lost, where reason fades, in the calmed twilight of Platonic shades. Lamia beheld him coming, near, more near, close to her passing in indifference drear. His silent sandals swept the mossy green, so neighbored to him, and yet so unseen, she stood. He passed, shut up in mysteries, his mind wrapped like his mantle, while her eyes followed his steps, and her neck regal white turned, syllabling thus: "Ah, Lycius bright, and will you leave me on the hills alone? Lycius, look back, and be some pity shown." He did, not with cold wonder fearingly, but Orpheus-like at an Eurydice, for so delicious were the words she sung, it seemed he had loved them a whole summer long, and soon his eyes had drunk her beauty up, leaving no drop in the bewildering cup, and still the cup was full, while he, afraid lest she should vanish ere his lip had paid due adoration, thus began to adore. Her soft look growing coy, she saw his chain so sure. "Leave thee alone? Look back? Ah, goddess, see whether my eyes can ever turn from thee. For pity do not this sad heart belie. Even as thou vanishest, so I shall die. Stay, though a naiad of the rivers, stay. To thy far wishes will thy streams obey. Stay, though the greenest woods be thy domain, alone they can drink up the morning rain. Though a descended Pleiad, will not one of thine harmonious sisters keep in tune thy spheres, and as thy silver proxies shine? So sweetly to these ravished ears of mine came thy sweet greeting, that if thou shouldst fade, thy memory will waste me to a shade, for pity do not melt." "If I should stay," said Lamia, "here upon this floor of clay, and pain my steps upon these flowers too rough, what canst thou say or do of charm enough to dull the nice remembrance of my home? Thou canst not ask me with thee here to roam over these hills and vales, where no joy is, empty of immortality and bliss. Thou art a scholar, Lycius, and must know that finer spirits cannot breathe below in human climes and live. Alas, poor youth, what taste of purer air hast thou to soothe my essence? What serener palaces, where I may all my many senses please, and by mysterious sleights 100 thirsts appease? It cannot be. Adieu." So said, she rose, tiptoe with white arms spread. He, sick to lose the amorous promise of her lone complaint, swooned, murmuring of love and pale with pain. The cruel lady, without any show of sorrow for her tender favourite's woe, but rather, if her eyes could brighter be, with brighter eyes and slow amenity, put her new lips to his, and gave afresh the life she had so tangled in her mesh. And as he from one trance was wakening into another, she began to sing, happy in beauty, life, and love, and everything, a song of love too sweet for earthly lyres, while, like held breath, the stars drew in their panting fires. And then she whispered in such trembling tone, as those who safe together met alone, for the first time through many anguished days, use other speech than looks, bidding him raise his drooping head, and clear his soul of doubt, for that she was a woman, and without any more subtle fluid in her veins than throbbing blood, and that the self-same pains inhabited her frail-strung heart as his. And next she wondered how his eyes could miss her face so long in Corinth, where, she said, she dwelt but half retired, and there had led days happy as the gold coin could invent, without the aid of love, yet in content, till she saw him, as once she passed him by, where 'gainst a column he leant thoughtfully at Venus' temple porch, mid baskets heaped of amorous herbs and flowers, newly reaped, late on that eve, as 'twas the night before the Adonian feast, whereof she saw no more, but wept alone those days, for why should she adore? Lycius from death awoke into amaze to see her still, and singing so sweet lays. Then from amaze into delight he fell, to hear her whisper woman's lore so well, and every word she spake enticed him on to unperplexed delight and pleasure known. Let the mad poets say whate'er they please of the sweets of fairies, peris, goddesses, there is not such a treat among them all, haunters of cavern, lake, and waterfall, as a real woman, lineal indeed, from purest pebbles or old Adam's seed. Thus gentle Lamia judged, and judged aright, that Lycius could not love in half a fright, so threw the goddess off, and won his heart more pleasantly by playing woman's part, with no more awe than what her beauty gave, that while it smote, still guaranteed to save. Lycius to all made eloquent reply, marrying to every word a twin-born sigh, and last, pointing to Corinth, asked her sweet, if 'twas too far that night for her soft feet. The way was short, for Lamia's eagerness made by a spell the triple league decrease to a few paces, not at all surmised by blinded Lycius, so in her comprised. They passed the city gates, he knew not how, so noiseless, and he never thought to know. As men talk in a dream, so Corinth all throughout her palaces imperial, and all her populous streets and temples lewd, muttered like tempest in the distance brewed, to the wide-spreaded night above her towers. Men, women, rich and poor, in the cool hours shuffle their sandals o'er the pavement white, companioned or alone, while many a light flared here and there from wealthy festivals, and threw their moving shadows on the walls, or found them clustered in the corniced shade of some arched temple door or dusky colonnade. Muffling his face, of greeting friends in fear, her fingers he pressed hard as one came near, with curled gray beard, sharp eyes, and smooth bald crown, slow-stepped and robed in philosophic gown. Lycius shrank closer as they met and passed into his mantle, adding wings to haste, while hurried Lamia trembled. "Ah," said he, "why do you shudder, love, so ruefully? Why does your tender palm dissolve in dew?" "I'm wearied," said fair Lamia. "Tell me, who is that old man? I cannot bring to mind his features. Lycius, wherefore did you blind yourself from his quick eyes?" Lycius replied, "'Tis Apollonius sage, my trusty guide and good instructor. But to-night he seems the ghost of folly haunting my sweet dreams." While yet he spake, they had arrived before a pillared porch with lofty portal door, where hung a silver lamp whose phosphor glow reflected in the slabbed depths below, mild as a star in water, for so new and so unsullied was the marble hue, so through the crystal polish, liquid fine, ran the dark veins that none but feet divine could e'er have touched there. Sounds Aeolian breathed from the hinges, as the ample span of the wide doors disclosed a place unknown sometime to any but those two alone, and a few Persian mutes, who that same year were seen about the markets. None knew where they could inhabit. The most curious were foiled, who watched to trace them to their house, and but the flitter-winged verse must tell, for truth's sake, what woe afterwards befell. 'Twould humor many a heart to leave them thus, shut from the busy world of more incredulous. End of Part 1 of Lamia by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 30 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. Lamia, Part 2. Love in a hut with water and a crust is, love forgive us, cinders, ashes, dust. Love in a palace is perhaps at last more grievous torment than a hermit's fast. That is a doubtful tale from fairyland, hard for the non-elect to understand. Had Lycius lived to hand his story down, he might have given the moral a fresh frown, or clenched it quite. But too short was their bliss to breed distrust and hate that make the soft voice hiss. Besides, there nightly, with terrific glare, Love, jealous grown of so complete a pair, hovered and buzzed his wings with fearful roar above the lintel of their chamber door, and down the passage cast a glow upon the floor. For all this came a ruin. Side by side they were enthroned in the eventide upon a couch, near to a curtaining whose airy texture from a golden string floated into the room, and let appear unveiled the summer heaven, blue and clear, betwixt two marble shafts. There they reposed where use had made it sweet, with eyelids closed, saving a tithe which love still open kept, that they might see each other while they almost slept. When from the slope side of a suburb hill, deafening the swallow's twitter, came a thrill of trumpets. Lycius started. The sounds fled, but left a thought, a buzzing in his head. For the first time since first he harbored in that purple-lined palace of sweet sin, his spirit passed beyond its golden bourne into the noisy world almost forsworn. The lady, ever watchful, penetrant, saw this with pain, so arguing a want of something more than her empery of joys, and she began to moan and sigh, because he mused beyond her, knowing well that but a moment's thought is passion's passing bell. "Why do you sigh, fair creature?" whispered he. "Why do you think?" returned she tenderly. "You have deserted me. Where am I now? Not in your heart, while care weighs on your brow. No, no, you have dismissed me, and I go from your breast houseless. Ay, it must be so." He answered, bending to her open eyes, where he was mirrored small in paradise, "My silver planet, both of eve and morn, why will you plead yourself so sad forlorn, while I am striving how to fill my heart with deeper crimson and a double smart? How to entangle, trammel up, and snare your soul in mine, and labyrinth you there like the hid scent in an unbudded rose? Ay, a sweet kiss! You see your mighty woes. My thoughts, shall I unveil them? Listen then. What mortal hath a prize that other men may be confounded and abashed withal, but lets it sometimes pace abroad majestical, and triumph, as in thee I should rejoice amid the hoarse alarm of Corinth's voice? Let my foes choke, and my friends shout afar, while through the thronged streets your bridal car wheels round its dazzling spokes." The lady's cheek trembled. She nothing said, but pale and meek arose and knelt before him, wept a rain of sorrows at his words, at last with pain beseeching him, the while his hand she wrung, to change his purpose. He thereat was stung, perverse, with stronger fancy to reclaim her wild and timid nature to his aim. Besides, for all his love, in self-despite, against his better self, he took delight luxurious in her sorrows, soft and new. His passion, cruel grown, took on a hue fierce and sanguineous, as 'twas possible in one whose brow had no dark veins to swell. Fine was the mitigated fury, like Apollo's presence when in act to strike the serpent. Ah, the serpent! Certes, she was none. She burnt, she loved the tyranny, and all subdued, consented to the hour when to the bridal he should lead his paramour. Whispering in midnight silence, said the youth, "Sure some sweet name thou hast, though by my truth I have not asked it, ever thinking thee not mortal, but of heavenly progeny, as still I do. Hast any mortal name, fit appellation for this dazzling frame, or friends or kinsfolk on the citied earth, to share our marriage feast and nuptial mirth?" "I have no friends," said Lamia, "no, not one. My presence in wide Corinth hardly known. My parents' bones are in their dusty urns sepulchred, where no kindled incense burns, seeing all their luckless race are dead, save me, and I neglect the holy rite for thee. Even as you list, invite your many guests, but if, as now it seems, your vision rests with any pleasure on me, do not bid old Apollonius, from him keep me hid." Lucius, perplexed at words so blind and blank, made close inquiry, from whose touch she shrank, feigning a sleep. And he to the dull shade of deep sleep in a moment was betrayed. It was the custom then to bring away the bride from home at blushing shut of day, veiled in a chariot, heralded along by strewn flowers, torches, and a merry song, with other pageants. But this fair unknown had not a friend. So being left alone, Lycius was gone to summon all his kin, and knowing surely she could never win his foolish heart from its mad pompousness, she set herself, high-thoughted, how to dress the misery in fit magnificence. She did so, but 'tis doubtful how and whence came, and who were her subtle servitors. About the halls, and to and from the doors, there was a noise of wings, till in short space the glowing banquet room shone with wide-arched grace, a haunting music, sole perhaps and lone supportress of the fairy roof, made moan throughout, as fearful the whole charm might fade. Fresh carved cedar, mimicking a glade of palm and plantain, met from either side, high in the midst, in honor of the bride. 2 palms, and then 2 plantains, and so on from either side their stems branched, one to one, all down the aisled place, and beneath all there ran a stream of lamps, straight on, from wall to wall. So canopied lay an untasted feast, teeming with odors. Lamia, regal dressed, silently paced about, and as she went, in pale, contented sort of discontent, missioned her viewless servants to enrich the fretted splendor of each nook and niche. Between the tree stems, marbled plain at first, came jasper panels, then anon there burst forth creeping imagery of slighter trees, and with the larger wove in small intricacies. Approving all, she faded at self-will, and shut the chamber up, close, hushed, and still, complete and ready for the revels rude, when dreadful guests would come to spoil her solitude. The day appeared, and all the gossip rout. O senseless Lycius, madman, wherefore flout the silent blessing fate, warm cloistered hours, and show to common eyes these secret bowers? The herd approached. Each guest with busy brain, arriving at the portal, gazed amain and entered marveling. For they knew the street, remembered it from childhood, all complete, without a gap. Yet ne'er before had seen that royal porch, that high-built fair demesne. So in they hurried all, mazed, curious, and keen, save one, who looked thereon with eye severe, and with calm planted steps walked in austere. 'Twas Apollonius. Something too he laughed, as though some knotty problem that had daft his patient thought had now begun to thaw, and solve, and melt. 'Twas just as he foresaw. He met within the murmurous vestibule his young disciple. "'Tis no common rule, Lycius," said he, "for uninvited guest to force himself upon you, and infest with an unbidden presence the bright throng of younger friends. Yet must I do this wrong, and you forgive me." Lycius blushed, and led the old man through the inner doors broad spread, with reconciling words and courteous mien, turning into sweet milk the sophist spleen. Of wealthy lustre was the banquet room, filled with pervading brilliance and perfume. Before each lucid panel fuming stood a censer fed with myrrh and spiced wood, each by a sacred tripod held aloft, whose slender feet wide swerved upon the soft wool-woofed carpets. 50 wreaths of smoke from 50 censers their light voyage took to the high roof, still mimicked as they rose along the mirrored walls by twin clouds odorous. 12 sphered tables, by silk seats ensphered, high as the level of a man's breast reared on Liberd's paws, upheld the heavy gold of cups and goblets, and the store thrice told of Ceres' horn. And in huge vessels wine came from the gloomy tun with merry shine. Thus loaded with a feast the tables stood, each shrining in the midst the image of a god. When in an antechamber every guest had felt the cold full sponge to pleasure pressed by ministering slaves upon his hands and feet, and fragrant oils with ceremony meet poured on his hair, they all moved to the feast in white robes, and themselves in order placed around the silken couches, wondering whence all this mighty cost and blaze of wealth could spring. Soft went the music the soft air along, while fluent Greek a voweled undersong kept up among the guests, discoursing low at first, for scarcely was the wine at flow. But when the happy vintage touched their brains, louder they talk, and louder came the strains of powerful instruments. The gorgeous dyes, the space, the splendor of the draperies, the roof of awful richness, nectarous cheer, beautiful slaves, and Lamia's self appear. Now when the wine has done its rosy deed, and every soul from human trammels freed, no more so strange. For merry wine, sweet wine, will make Elysian shades not too fair, too divine. Soon was god Bacchus at meridian height. Flushed were their cheeks and bright eyes double bright. Garlands of every green and every scent from vales deflowered, or forest trees branch rent, in baskets of bright osier gold were brought, high as the handles heaped to suit the thought of every guest, that each, as he did please, might fancy fit his brows, silk-pillowed at his ease. What wreath for Lamia? What for Lycius? What for the sage, old Apollonius? Upon her aching forehead be there hung the leaves of willow and of adder's tongue. And for the youth, quick let us strip for him the thyrsus, that his watching eyes may swim into forgetfulness. And for the sage, let spear-grass and the spiteful thistle wage war on his temples. Do not all charms fly at the mere touch of cold philosophy? There was an awful rainbow once in heaven. We know her woof, her texture. She is given in the dull catalogue of common things. Philosophy will clip an angel's wings, conquer all mysteries by rule and line, empty the haunted air and nomad mine, unweave a rainbow, as it erewhile made the tender-personed Lamia melt into a shade. By her glad Lycius sitting in chief place, scarce saw in all the room another face, till, checking his love-trance, a cup he took, full brimmed, and opposite sent forth a look, crossed the broad table, to beseech a glance from his old teacher's wrinkled countenance, and pledge him. The bald-head philosopher had fixed his eye, without a twinkle or stir, full on the alarmed beauty of the bride, brow-beating her fair form, and troubling her sweet pride. Lycius then pressed her hand with devout touch, as pale it lay upon the rosy couch. 'Twas icy, and the cold ran through his veins. Then sudden it grew hot, and all the pains of an unnatural heat shot to his heart. "Lamia, what means this? Wherefore dost thou start? Knowest thou that man?" Poor Lamia answered not. He gazed into her eyes, and not a jot owned they the love-lorn piteous appeal. More he gazed, his human senses reel, some hungry spell that loveliness absorbs. There was no recognition in those orbs. "Lamia!" he cried, and no soft-toned reply. The many heard, and the loud revelry grew hush. The stately music no more breathes, the myrtle sickened in 1,000 wreaths. By faint degrees, voice, lute, and pleasure ceased. A deadly silence step by step increased, until it seemed a horrid presence there, and not a man but felt the terror in his hair. "Lamia!" he shrieked, and nothing but the shriek with its sad echo did the silence break. "Begone, foul dream!" he cried, gazing again in the bride's face, where now no azure vein wandered on fair-spaced temples, no soft bloom misted the cheek, no passion to illume the deep-recessed vision. All was blight. Lamia, no longer fair, there sat a deadly white. Shut those juggling eyes, thou ruthless man! Turn them aside, wretch, or the righteous ban of all the gods whose dreadful images here represent their shadowy presences may pierce them on the sudden with the thorn of painful blindness, leaving thee forlorn and trembling dotage to the feeblest fright of conscience, for their long offended might, for all thine impious proud heart's sophistries, unlawful magic, and enticing lies. Corinthians, look upon that grey-beard wretch! Mark how possessed his lashless eyelids stretch around his demon eyes. Corinthians, see! My sweet bride withers at their potency." "Fool!" said the sophist in an undertone, gruff with contempt, which a death-nigh moan from Lycius answered, as heart-struck and lost, he sank supine beside the aching ghost. "Fool, fool!" repeated he, while his eyes still relented not, nor moved. "From every ill of life have I preserved thee to this day, and shall I see thee made a serpent's prey?" Then Lamia breathed death breath. The sophist's eye, like a sharp spear, went through her utterly, keen, cruel, prescient, stinging. She, as well as her weak hand could any meaning tell, motioned him to be silent. Vainly so. He looked and looked again, a level no. "A serpent!" echoed he. No sooner said than with a frightful scream she vanished, and Lycius' arms were empty of delight, as were his limbs of life from that same night. On the high couch he lay. His friends came round, supported him. No pulse or breath they found, and in its marriage robe the heavy body wound. End of Part 2 of Lamia by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 31 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. To Byron. Byron, how sweetly sad thy melody, attuning still the soul to tenderness, as if soft pity, with unusual stress, had touched her plaintive lute, and thou, being by, hadst caught the tones, nor suffered them to die. O'ershadowing sorrow doth not make thee less delightful, thou thy griefs dost dress with a bright halo shining beamily, as when a cloud the golden moon doth veil, its sides are tinged with a resplendent glow, through the dark robe oft amber rays prevail, and like fair veins in sable marble flow. Still warble, dying swan, still tell the tale, the enchanting tale, the tale of pleasing woe. End of To Byron by John Keats. Recording by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio. Section 32 of John Keats Selected Poems. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leonard Wilson. A Song About Myself. There was a naughty boy was he. He would not stop at home, he could not quiet be. He took in his knapsack a book full of vowels, and a shirt with some towels, a slight cap for nightcap, a hairbrush, comb ditto, new stockings, for old ones would split This knapsack tight at his back he riveted close, and followed his nose to the north, and followed his nose to the north. There was a naughty boy, and a naughty boy was he, for nothing would he do but scribble poetry. He took an inkstand in his hand, and a pen big as 10 in the other, and away in a pother he ran to the mountains and fountains and ghosties and posties and witches and ditches, and wrote in his coat when the weather was cool, fear of gout, and without when the weather was warm. Ah, the charm, when we choose to follow one's nose to the north, to follow one's nose to the north. There was a naughty boy, and a naughty boy was he. He kept little fishes in washing tubs 3, in spite of the might of the maid, nor afraid of his granny good. He often would hurly-burly get up early, and go by hook or crook to the brook, and bring home miller's thumb tittlebat, not over fat, minnows small as the small of a glove, not above the size of a nice little baby's little fingers. Oh, he made, 'twas his trade, of fish a pretty kettle, a kettle of fish, a pretty kettle, a kettle. There was a naughty boy, and a naughty boy was he. He ran away to Scotland the people for to see. There he found that the ground was as hard, that a yard was as long, that a song was as merry, that a cherry was as red, that lead was as weighty, that 80 was as 80, that a door was as wooden as in England. So he stood in his shoes, and he wondered, he wondered. He stood in his shoes, and he wondered. End of A Song About Myself by John Keats. Also, end of John Keats Selected Poems. Selected and recorded by Leonard Wilson of Springfield, Ohio.